Anxiety, something we all suffer. In fact, maybe more so now than in years past. But that is the great bugaboo of public speaking. The fear of getting up and talking in front of other people. It's a real genuine fear. And in the PowerPoint lecture that you're going to watch, I'm going to talk about not only why we suffer this kind of fear, but also some potential ways that you can at least manage it. Now, I'm not going to say that you're ever going to overcome the idea of speaking in front of a group of people, whoever it may be. Uh, there's a story from an interview with Celine Dion. Remember her? She's the one that sang the song for Titanic, where Kate Winslet was up in the front of the ship, and the song was going. Uh, anyway, someone was interviewing Celine Dion and asked her if she suffered from stage fright. Same thing as speech anxiety. She said, "Oh, absolutely. I'm petrified." And they said, "But you've been doing this for years." And she said, "I'm still petrified, but I've learned to manage fear." And that's what my PowerPoint is all about. Now, in my last communication, I asked you all to make sure you read Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is pretty much a general introduction. I have it right here, of course. Let me just, Chapter 1. Yes, I have a hard copy of the book. Uh, so, Chapter 1 covers uh, sort of the history of um, public speaking. Talks a little bit about different medias. You know, there was a time when you wanted to get information out, the only way to do it was to go out and say something. You may have seen the old movies with the town crier, hear ye, going through the town. Well, that really, truly happened. So uh, I've asked you to read that, and as I've said, I kind of jump around a little bit. It's worth at least reading this chapter 1, but for speech anxiety, that's chapter 2, and chapter 2 is called Building Your Confidence. So I'm going to ask you to also read chapter 2. Now, interestingly, there are bits and pieces of ways to deal with speech anxiety scattered in some of the other chapters. I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. I think you'll find that the information I'm giving you today will cover all of that. And yes, this sort of thing is on the test. Especially, I'm going to talk about breathing techniques. Make sure you know those. They are. I say this in the video, and I don't want to take up too much time. This is going to be a very short introduction. I don't want to take up too much time rehashing what's in my PowerPoint lecture, but I cover uh, things such as uncertainty. And uncertainty is the greatest driver of anxiety. There was a wonderful movie produced back in 1977 by Mel Brooks called High Anxiety. It's a comedy. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube or Netflix or someplace. If you like Mel Brooks comedy, it's well worth watching. It's a great movie. And it's all about this idea of fear of different things. So, uh, it's real. Uncertainty drives our desire to overcome anxiety, to make us feel better. So pay attention to the idea of uncertainty. I also talk about the actual physical aspects of fear. I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, we've all experienced this. We're in a stressful situation. Our hands start to sweat. We get butterflies in our stomach. Talk about that as a real, honest to goodness, physical aspect of fear and anxiety. That's why I'm saying you never really get over the idea of speech anxiety, stage fright, whatever you want to call it. You learn how to manage it. And in particular, I talk about Charles Darwin. I hope you like the little story about Darwin. And then I go on to talk about uh, the aspects of how to manage it, especially breathing techniques. Now, in my very first PowerPoint lecture on successful speaking, I provide you with Ray's 3 rules for public speaking. You will not find these in the book. You will see them on a test. Okay. No, I just didn't make them up out of whole cloth somewhere. They're the real thing. And my first rule is never assume anything. My second rule is, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. My first rule is never apologize. My second rule is never assume anything. And my third rule, slow down. And boy, I'm going to tell you right now, I talk about this in the PowerPoint lecture as well. Learning to pace yourself, breathing, slowing down will do more to conquer your fear of speaking to other people, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in front of an auditorium full of people. Slowing down. We tend to speak very rapidly when we get nervous. And so this is a major technique for overcoming anxiety. Well, as I said, I don't want to get a hold of myself, or excuse me, ahead of myself. Uh, it's been a crazy day already, and my mind is whirring around on all kinds of subjects and projects that are going on. But anyway, uh, not getting ahead of myself, I don't want to go over everything that's in that PowerPoint. So read chapter 2. I will place the PowerPoint itself on speech anxiety into the Canvas files. You can go in there and look at it. And as I've said before, at least in an announcement, and maybe I said it on the video, these PowerPoints in the file are a really great way to review for tests. You don't have to listen to me over again. You can just go through and look at those PowerPoint slides. Now, I try to hit the high points that are in the chapters with my PowerPoints. But please remember, you still need to read the chapters because there's information in there that I don't have time to go over, and it's still important. But you can use my PowerPoints as the jumping off point. This is what I find to be the most important parts of each of these chapters and topics. Anyway, keep that in mind. So there you go. High anxiety. Nobody likes to get up in front of a crowd and give a talk. Well, almost nobody. One last little story. Some years ago, I had a student in my class come up to me, a lady. It was like the first or second class, and she said, "I'm just terrified of getting up and speaking in front of people at work." And I said, "Okay, what's the problem?" She told me that she worked for Cirque du Soleil. Now, she wasn't an acrobat, she wasn't a performer of any kind. She had the job of going around to every venue on the strip that had a Cirque production and giving weekly updates to the performers and cast. And she said she was just terrified because she felt like these people were the experts. What did she know? She was just the messenger. And it made her terribly nervous. So we worked on some of the uncertainty issues, slowing down, and breathing. And by the end of that semester, she came to me and said, "I feel a whole lot better about doing it." So this really does work. This has practical application. And I hope you find this particular lecture really useful, not just for this class, but for communicating in general. There you go. Anxiety, speech anxiety, stage fright. I think I'm going to barf. That happened. I said one last thing. Okay, one last thing. I've actually had people throw up in class. due to anxiety. One young man who came up and gripped the podium with the grip of death. I think his finger marks are still on that podium. And he locked his knees. And about 30 seconds into his speech, he passed out. So, yeah, it's like, oh, wonderful. Isn't it great to be a professor of speech and watch people go through this torture? So, as I said, it's a real thing, but it's easier to overcome than you might imagine. Watch the PowerPoint. If you have any questions, as always, please contact me. So, thanks for watching this little video. Now go on and watch my PowerPoint anxiety.